kids, welcome to Grow with Miss Nancy. I am so glad you're here today. I want to tell you about something that happens in other places of the world that I think is kind of weird. I got this clay here, and I thought I would make this little person actually he's not really going to be a person. He's going to be a pagan god. What do you think of that? Does that look like something or other? Well, what if I lived in another country and I said, okay, so I have now made this God, with a little g, God, not our God, but a pagan God, and I'm going to worship him. I'm going to say, I'm going to pray to you every day. I'm going to ask you to make sure it rains. I'm going to ask you to make sure that my family has enough to eat. Would that be dumb and a half or what? You know that this is something that I made, and it has absolutely no power whatsoever, correct? Do you know there are some people in this world, they do worship things that people made? How can that have any power? It cannot, right? Exactly. But then in some countries, there are people who worship their money. You know, their money is the most important thing in their whole lives. Or maybe celebrities. You know, they just think, that person is so wonderful. LeBron James, he is just the fabulous person. I'm just so impressed with him. If he asked me to do something, I would do it. Or maybe they just worship their stuff. You know, maybe they love to go fishing, so they worship their boat and their fishing stuff, or they love, who knows what they love. They love all the stuff in their room. But you know, that's not how God wants us to do. They want us to love him. And when we worship God, remember we talked about you can worship God by putting your hope in God. You can worship God by asking him for your help. You can worship God by remembering the stuff that he does for us. And we can worship God by living for him. And it talks about that right here in Psalm 112. And I want to read some of that to you and share it with you today. It says, how joyful are those who fear the Lord. Remember what we said about fear. It's not being scared, right? It's having respect and awe for God because he is so great and wonderful. How joyful are those who fear the Lord and delight in obeying his commands. Their children will be successful everywhere. An entire generation of godly people will be blessed. I want you to listen for the promises that God has in this psalm, okay? For those who fear the Lord and who obey his commands with delight. They themselves will be wealthy, and their good deeds will last forever. That's a promise, right? They are, light shines in the darkness for the godly. They are generous, compassionate, and righteous. Do you remember what we said compassionate is? Compassionate is when you have very strong feelings that you want to help somebody out of the suffering and you really want to help get them to a better place. So God has compassion for us, but we can have compassion for others, right? And be generous and help them out. Good comes to those who lend money generously and conduct their business fairly. That's another promise, right? Such people will not be overcome by evil. Those who are righteous will be long remembered. They do not fear bad news. They confidently trust the Lord to care for them. They are confident and fearless and can face their foes triumphantly. What's a foe? That's your enemy, right? Somebody who's against you. Do we have an enemy? I think Satan could be our enemy, don't you? He doesn't want us to love God. He doesn't want us to be God's children. He wants to see bad things happen to us. But this is saying that if we are trusting in God, God will be right there and he'll protect us and help us through all of this. They can share freely and give generously to those in need. Their good deeds will be remembered forever. They will have influence and honor. Do you hear all of those promises? Oh my goodness sakes. God wants to bless you. He wants to live in a way, or He wants us to live in a way that we show that we trust in Him. And that would show other people, and they would look at you and say, I wonder why they're having such a good life. And they may ask us, what is it that is making you have such a good life? And you could tell and share, couldn't you? That's worshiping God as well. If you live in a way that shows you are trusting Him. So you can worship God a whole lot of different ways other than just going to church on Sundays and singing songs and praying. You can put your hope in Him. You can remember the things that He did. You can be living for Him and ask Him whenever you need help, because He's right there looking out for you every minute. That's good to know, isn't it? Well, I'll see you next week, and we're going to talk about something totally different.